This is Eugene Panritkovich. I'm the laptop screen doc, and the name of the website is www.screensurgeons.com. Today we're going to show you how to separate the screen bezel, that's the plastic frame around the screen, from a touchscreen laptop screen assembly. So let me explain a little bit what I'm talking about. So for many 15.6-inch laptop touch screens, the screen, when you take it out of the back of the screen assembly, is going to look like this. It's going to consist of three elements: the plastic bezel, the frame around the screen, the glass layer on top, that's the touch layer, and on the back, bonded to the glass layer, we have the LCD screen itself. So if you're unfortunate enough that either the the digitizer, the glass part on top, or the LCD screen on the frame back gets broken, or both, and when you order replacement parts, you'll get something that looks like this come in the mail. It may or may not contain the bezel, that's the plastic frame around the screen, and if it doesn't contain the bezel, you have to separate the bezel from the old screen assembly and put it on the new screen assembly, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do today, to separate this plastic bezel from the old screen assembly and to put it on the new screen assembly. Okay, so the first question, how do you know if the screen assembly that comes in already has the bezel? There are two ways. First is if you can visibly discern a plastic frame around the screen. That means it's the bezel that came in. If it's just glass on the edge, that means you have to transfer the bezel. And the other way is just to compare what the old assembly looks like with the broken assembly looks like with the new assembly. If one looks like it has a plastic frame and the other doesn't, that means you have to transfer it. Okay, so getting that over it, I'm going to show you how to first remove the plastic frame from the old screen assembly and then transfer it to the new assembly. And I'll show you some of the tools we're going to use. All our new replacement digitizers and assemblies, they come with a toolkit, and this toolkit includes two screwdrivers, which we're not going to use in this case, but you might have to use them when you remove the screen assembly from the laptop. We have a hobby or an X-Acto knife, and we're going to use that to lift up the adhesive film. We have a metal spudger, and that can be used to pry the bezel from the screen assembly, and pair metal tweezers, and that can be used to put the new adhesive down on the bezel. Finally, I'm going to use a heat gun from this procedure, but you can use a hair dryer. The thing that you have to be careful, especially with a heat gun, is not to get the plastic part too hot, or it will melt and it won't fit the new assembly that well. So the first thing that we need to do is to remove the assembly from the bezel from the screen assembly. And what we want to do first is we want to heat the edges of the assembly up so that it's easier to lift up the adhesive. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go around for a while and heat it up, being careful not to get the bezel too hot so it doesn't melt. So one other way is just to heat up a certain area and start lifting it up. So that's what we're going to do. Fortunately, this one is not on too tight. So what we're doing is, here's a good angle, we're going around. This one is pretty loose already, so it's not as bad. So this part we're going to have to heat up a little bit. When you do it at home, it might take a little bit longer. And if the going gets too tough, just heat up the assembly again. But this one is pretty easy so far. And the glass might break when you're doing this, when you remove it from the old assembly, but that's okay because you're replacing the glass anyway. So we can get going. You can fast forward the video through this part. Okay, so there's a circuit board in the back, so we gotta get behind the circuit board, and then we keep going around the edge like so. Like I said, when you do this at home, the bezel will probably be on a bit tighter than this one's on. Okay, and then just work it off from the circuit board. Try to not to damage any parts, even if they're not reusable, just to make sure. Alright, the bezel, the plastic bezel is now separated, and then, okay, let's get a focus, and we have the screen assembly without the plastic bezel. This is what typically a screen assembly looks like without the bezel on. Most likely this is what you'll get when you order the replacement parts. The glass goes all the way to the edge. Okay, next, so you have the bezel off, and then you want to transfer it to the new assembly. For this particular case, I do not have the new assembly, so I'm going to show you how to transfer it just using what we have on hand. When you get a screen assembly or a digitizer from us, you'll get these adhesive strips that we have pre-cut for you, and basically the next thing to do is to lay down the adhesive strips where the screen assembly will be in contact with the bezel. And for that you have to look for clues from the old screen assembly. You see the gray stripes over here and over here and over here, so we try to follow the same pattern, laying down the new adhesive. So let's pretend that this is the new screen assembly, and what we want to do is have the old and the new screen assembly side by side and lay down the adhesive strips in identical locations to where the old adhesive strips were. So in this case I'm going to show you how to do it just for this bottom part. So what you want to do is use the hobby knife. It's a two-sided adhesive strip, so there's two sides, both sides have adhesive on the side, and there's covered by paper. So what we want to do is lift up the paper using the hobby knife off of one side and then peel it back like so, and then lay it down like so on the new assembly. So I'm laying it down on the old adhesive, but in your case, when you have the new assembly, you'll be laying it down on a bare surface. So go like this and make sure it lines up. Okay, and then when you get to the edge, just use scissors to cut the remaining part that's not used. Now, when you're put down all the adhesive strips all around, and when you're ready to put the new assembly back on the new bezel, what you need to do is use the hobby knife, and this can be a little bit tricky sometimes. So use the hobby knife to lift up the paper so you expose the adhesive surface on the top, and then when you lift up a corner enough, you can use the metal tweezers to help you along. So in this way you lift up the paper and you expose the adhesive surface. So what you want to do is you want to touch, make sure it's sticky. In my case it's I didn't quite lift it up all the way, so it's a bit tricky to do it with the camera going, so I'm going to try again. There we go. So now we can see, now we can see the adhesive surface is exposed. And in this way, you go all the way out, like so, and you have the adhesive. So I'm going to use the hobby knife to cut it off here, but I would advise using the scissors in your case. It's a cleaner cut. So now you have a double-sided adhesive laid down on both sides, and when you attach it to the bezel again, it should stick. Couple notes: when you go around the screen assembly, there will be irregular adhesive surface. So here we see that it's thicker. So what we want to do is lay down a double strip, cut off a piece, and then cut off a piece, another double strip in this case, and same here. So you have to improvise a little bit to make sure where you have the thicker adhesive surface and where you have the thinner adhesive surface. Okay, once you do that, you put the screen assembly back in. Make sure you line it up on the edge and then gently lay it down. Another thing to watch out for is there's magnets in the bezel that tells you when the laptop is open or closed. Make sure that the magnet is still in there and you don't lose it. So most times the magnets are in there pretty good, but sometimes they fall out. Alright, so then once you put the assembly back into the bezel, you can mount the whole assembly into the back of the laptop and put the screws in and snap it back in and do the connectors, and that should be good. You should be good to go. We have other videos that are specific to each particular model to show you how to remove the assembly and how to put it back into the laptop. This particular screen assembly is for Dell Inspiron, but this similar procedure works pretty much for all the other laptop models that kind of look like this. Most of the time when you'll be doing this, it's either 14-inch, 15.6-inch, or 17.3-inch screen assemblies, and sometimes 13.3-inch also. Okay, that's it. Once again, my name is Eugene Panrudkovich. I'm the laptop screen doc, and the name of the website is www.screensurgeons.com. Thank you very much, and good luck.